July 4th, 1942. The Barents Sea. 33 merchant ships are steaming northeast toward Archangel, carrying enough tanks, aircraft, and ammunition to equip an entire Soviet army. For 8 days, they have held formation despite attacks by U-boats and Luftwaffe bombers. 3 ships have been lost. 30 remain. The concentrated anti-aircraft fire from the Convoy has already driven off multiple attacks, and Commander Jack Broom aboard HMS Keppel later writes that his impression was that PQ-17 could get anywhere, providing the ammunition lasted. Then the order arrives from London. At 21:11 hours, the first signal, cruiser force withdraw westward at high speed. 12 minutes later, the second convoy is to disperse and proceed to Russian ports. 13 minutes after that, the third and most devastating, convoy is to scatter. The signals arrive so rapidly, with such obvious urgency, that every commander at sea reaches the same conclusion. The German battleship Tirpitz must already be over the horizon. It is not. Tirpitz will not even leave her anchorage until the following morning, and when she does, German admirals will recall her within 6 hours, never firing a single shot. But the scatter order has already done its work. The 30 merchant ships that have survived 8 days in convoy formation are now spreading across hundreds of miles of the Arctic Ocean, alone, defenseless, in perpetual daylight that makes concealment impossible. The hunting begins. Within 9 days, 21 more ships will be sunk by U-boats and bombers. 146 more merchant seamen will die. 430 tanks, 210 aircraft, and nearly 100,000 tons of cargo will sink to the bottom of the Barents Sea. Before the scatter order, the convoy had lost 3 ships in 8 days. After the scatter order, it loses 21 ships in 9. Winston Churchill will call it one of the most melancholy naval episodes in the whole of the war. Admiral Tovey, commanding the home fleet, will write that the order to scatter had been premature and its results were disastrous. The American merchant mariners who survive will spend decades fighting for recognition of their service. The Anglo-Soviet alliance will be poisoned by Stalin's suspicion that the British abandoned the convoy deliberately. But in the chaos of those first hours after the scatter order, a 42-year-old barrister commanding a converted fishing trawler is making a different calculation entirely. His name is Leo Gradwell. His ship is HMT Ayrshire. He is about to demonstrate the most fundamental principle of naval warfare by doing the opposite of what he has been ordered to do. HMT Ayrshire was built by Smith's Dock Company near Middlesbrough and launched on January 17, 1938. She began life as the motor trawler MS Ayrshire, registered at Hull under the fishing number H113. She displaced 575 long tons, roughly 1/100th the weight of the German battleship Tirpitz, which would shape her destiny 4 years later. The Admiralty requisitioned her in November 1939, 2 months into the war. Her fish holds became mess decks, and her deck beams were reinforced. She received a single 4-inch gun mounted on the bow, ASTIC sonar fitted below the waterline, and depth charge racks on the stern. Her maximum speed was approximately 12 knots. A surfaced U-boat could do 17. A destroyer could do 30. She could not outrun anything that might want to kill her. Her crew of roughly 30 to 40 men were volunteer fishermen from the Royal Naval Patrol Service, including men from the Isle of Lewis in Scotland's Western Isles, and former Hull trawlermen who had fished in Arctic waters before the war. They were part of what the regular Navy dismissively called Harry Tate's Navy. The nickname came from a music hall comedian famous for a sketch called Motoring, in which he played a bumbling car owner whose vehicle gradually fell apart around him while he remained convinced he was in control. Harry Tate entered British slang during the First World War as shorthand for anything clumsy and improvised. The Royal Naval Patrol Service adopted it with defiant pride, even as regular Navy officers regarded them as too rough and ready to go through naval discipline. The class distinctions were sharp. Regular Royal Navy officers wore straight gold braid. Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve officers like Gradwell wore wavy braid, earning them the nickname the Wavy Navy. The fishermen of the patrol service occupied the lowest rung of this hierarchy. They were amateurs in uniform, civilians playing at being sailors. But Leo Gradwell was not a fisherman. He was a barrister who had been called to the bar in 1925 and practiced on the Northern Circuit in Liverpool. He had been educated at Stonyhurst College and Balliol College, Oxford, where he read classics. He spoke 6 languages. In his spare time, he sailed recreationally in the Irish Sea, earning a coastal navigation certificate, an amateur credential that would prove more consequential than anything he had learned at Oxford. When the scatter order reached Ayrshire on the evening of July 4th, Gradwell faced a choice that no amount of legal training had prepared him for. His 12-knot trawler could not outrun a U-boat. It could not outrun a bomber. It certainly could not outrun Tirpitz if the battleship really was over the horizon. Running for Archangel alone meant crossing hundreds of miles of open sea in perpetual daylight with a single 4-inch gun. But Gradwell's general heading was already northward, toward the ice shelf, and he realized that if he was going to die in the Arctic anyway, he might as well take some merchant ships with him. The sequence of how he assembled his little convoy is documented across multiple accounts. Gradwell first found SS Ironclad heading north and began escorting her. The pair soon encountered SS Troubadour, and she joined them. Gradwell then led his charges toward the pack ice edge, where they found SS Silversword skirting the ice. She too fell in with them. SS Troubadour was a Panamanian-flagged freighter of 6,428 gross registered tons, crewed by Norwegian officers whose homeland had been under Nazi occupation since 1940. Her captain was George J. Salveson, 34 years old. The American Naval Armed Guard Detachment was led by Ensign Howard Carraway, a farm boy from South Carolina whose prior nautical experience consisted of rowing a skiff around a farm pond. Troubadour's cargo included bunkering coal, drums of white paint destined for Russia, and M3 tanks as deck cargo. The paint and coal would prove decisive. SS Ironclad was an American Hog Island-type freighter of 5,685 gross registered tons, operated by the Waterman Steamship Company. Her armed guard officer was Ensign William Carter, who had passed up Harvard Business School to join the Navy. She carried M3 tanks on deck, along with military vehicles, aircraft, and ammunition. SS Silver Sword was another American Hog Islander of 4,937 gross registered tons, captained by Clyde W. Colbeth Jr. from Chesapeake Island, Maine. She carried tanks and general war supplies. These 3 merchant ships and 1 converted fishing trawler were now steaming toward the Arctic ice pack, while the rest of Convoy PQ-17 was being systematically hunted to destruction behind them. Gradwell navigated into the pack ice using nothing more than a sextant and the Times World Geographic pocketbook. His trawler carried no charts for these waters. The 2 former Hull fishermen who had sailed in Arctic waters before the war were sent to the top of the masts to guide the ship through channels in the ice. SS Troubadour, with her stiffened bows, was put in the lead as an improvised icebreaker. Gradwell drove his unlikely convoy approximately 20 miles into the pack ice near Novaya Zemlya until the ships could go no further and became stuck fast. Then he ordered engines stopped and fires banked, eliminating the coal smoke that could betray their position to any searching aircraft. What followed was an act of improvisation that defines the entire ethos of Harry Tate's Navy. Gradwell ordered every available surface painted white using the drums of white paint from Troubadour's cargo. Decks were covered with white linen, bedsheets and tablecloths, anything available. Troubadour and Ayrshire were painted on both sides. Ironclad and Silver Sword coated only their starboard sides, the flank exposed to any German reconnaissance aircraft flying along the ice edge. The M3 tanks carried as deck cargo were turned into a defensive perimeter. Their 37mm turret guns were loaded and manned, pointed outward, creating a ring of armored firepower around the makeshift anchorage. A photograph held by the U.S. Naval History and Heritage Command shows crew members of Troubadour hurriedly camouflaging the ship, with an M3 tank visible in the foreground, its gun improvised for anti-aircraft use. The ships remained frozen in the ice for approximately 2 to 3 days. During this time, the crews sat in silence and listened to the radio distress calls of their fellow PQ-17 ships being hunted and sunk across the Barents Sea. German BV-138 flying clog reconnaissance aircraft flew along the pack ice edge. They failed to spot the camouflaged vessels hidden 20 miles deep in the white expanse. The combination of distance from the ice edge, white paint, white linen, banked fires, and the sheer improbability of anyone hiding inside the ice pack rendered the 4 ships invisible. If you are finding this deep dive into British naval improvisation interesting, consider subscribing. It takes a moment and helps the channel continue producing content like this. Now back to what happened when the ICE finally released them. When the ice shifted around July 7th and the ships found themselves unstuck, Gradwell ordered the Breakout. The 4 vessels emerged from the pack ice and made for the Matochkin Strait, the narrow passage between Novaya Zemlya's 2 main islands, where they found other PQ-17 survivors had also gathered. By July 19th, when corvettes HMS Poppy, HMS Lotus, and HMS La Malouine arrived under Commodore Dowding, who had survived the sinking of his own flagship River Afton, 5 merchant ships were anchored in the strait. Benjamin Harrison, Silver Sword, Troubadour, Ironclad, and the Soviet tanker Azerbaijan joined the Russian icebreaker Merman and HMT Ayrshire. The corvettes organized the survivors into a convoy and escorted them south. On July 24th and 25th, 1942, all 4 ghost ships reached Archangel safely, nearly a full month after leaving Iceland, 3 weeks after the scatter order. The voyage, originally projected to take 8 days, had lasted 4 weeks. The cargo unloaded from the surviving ships, tanks, crated fighter planes, food, and war supplies was sent by rail to the defense of besieged Leningrad. Of PQ-17's original 35 ships, only 11 reached their destination, delivering approximately 70,000 tons of the roughly 200,000 tons that had departed Iceland. Gradwell's 4 ships represented more than a third of the survivors. The irony of the scatter order becomes clear when the statistics are examined. The convoy lost 3 ships in 8 days while maintaining formation. It lost 21 ships in 9 days after scattering. The concentrated anti-aircraft fire that had protected the formation was gone, and the mutual support that allows warships to cover each other was gone. U-boats and the Luftwaffe simply picked off isolated merchantmen one by one in the perpetual Arctic daylight. Gradwell did not technically disobey the scatter order. Nothing prohibited an escort vessel from accompanying merchant ships. But he defied its spirit completely by actively gathering ships and leading them to safety. While every other commander scattered as ordered, Gradwell did the opposite, and his ships survived. The Royal Naval Patrol Service traced its origins to 1907, when Admiral Lord Charles Beresford recommended using Grimsby trawlers for minesweeping, arguing that fishermen's skills with heavy warps and winches were identical to those needed for mine clearance. During the First World War, the concept proved itself. In 1939, it was reactivated at scale. The Royal Naval Patrol Service was headquartered at Sparrow's Nest in Lowestoft, Suffolk, commissioned as HMS Europa. More than 60,000 men passed through during the war, operating approximately 6,000 small craft of every description. Trawlers, drifters, whalers, motor fishing vessels, motor launches, and paddle steamers supported those efforts. Their primary roles were minesweeping, anti-submarine warfare, and convoy escort. They served in every theater, from the Arctic to the Atlantic to the Mediterranean to the Far East. The losses were staggering. The Royal Naval Patrol Service lost over 250 vessels, more than any other branch of the Royal Navy. Approximately 2,385 men with no known grave are commemorated on the Lowestoft Naval Memorial in Bellevue Park. Total Royal Naval Patrol Service dead in the Second World War numbered approximately 3,200. These losses are part of a story that is often overlooked. Leo Gradwell was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, gazetted on September 15, 1942. His coxswain acting petty officer John Morrison from the Isle of Lewis was mentioned in dispatches. One Russian source suggests Gradwell could have received a higher decoration if he had been more disciplined and followed orders. That is a telling detail about how his initiative was viewed by the naval establishment. Distinguished marks the official recognition he received. Gradwell's achievement was largely overshadowed for decades by the scandal of the scatter order itself. First, Sea Lord Dudley Pound, already suffering from the brain tumor that would kill him in October 1943, never faced formal accountability for his decision. David Irving's 1968 book about PQ-17 blamed Commander Broome for the disaster, and public attention focused on that controversy when Broome sued for libel and won £40,000 in damages plus £25,000 in exemplary damages. For many years, the story remained better known in Russia than in Britain or America. It took the 2014 BBC Two documentary PQ-17, an Arctic convoy disaster, presented by Jeremy Clarkson and featuring Gradwell's son Christopher, to bring the Ayrshire story to wider public attention. The definitive account came in 2019 with William Giroux's The Ghost Ships of Archangel, the first full-length narrative focused on Gradwell's 4 ships, drawing on previously untapped diaries and interviews with surviving merchant mariners. Definitive describes that later, deeper telling. Gradwell himself returned to civilian life after the war. He was appointed stipendiary magistrate at Marlborough Street Magistrates Court in 1951, shortly afterward contracting polio but recovering and returning to the bench. In July 1963, he presided over the committal hearing for Stephen Ward during the Profumo affair. In 1966, he presided over the obscenity prosecution of Hubert Selby Jr.'s novel Last Exit to Brooklyn. He died on November 8, 1969, aged 70, with his family at his bedside. Magistrate describes his post-war role. The trawler that saved 3 ships most likely went back to catching fish. Consider the paradox at the heart of this story. The regular Royal Navy dismissed the Wavy Navy and Harry Tate's fishermen as amateurs. The first Sea Lord overruled his own intelligence experts to issue an order that scattered a functioning convoy into a killing field. And in the chaos that followed, it was a barrister with a pocket atlas and a crew of volunteer fishermen on a converted trawler who demonstrated the most fundamental principle of naval warfare. Ships survive in groups, not alone. 24 merchant ships scattered as ordered and were destroyed by U-boats and bombers hunting in the perpetual Arctic daylight. 4 ships gathered together, painted themselves white, hid in the ice, and delivered their cargo to defend Leningrad. The professional admirals gave an order that killed a convoy. The amateur in a wavy braid ignored its spirit and saved 3 ships. That was British seamanship. That was Harry Tate's Navy. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Leave a comment now and tell us where you are watching from. Our community stretches across the entire world. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you are here. Click the video on the left to watch how this cheap and nasty warship destroyed everything.